gladly working with students and became interested in ethics and building ethical culture amongst our young people. So, right, the project that I am handling at this moment, if I can just introduce it, is building institutional systems and cultures that empower individuals and organizations for ethical action and leadership. I am particularly concerned about ethical action and leadership. That's a part I want to focus, or I am focusing on. And there is a background to why I am in this. In the last few years, when we look at just our societies and how things have been, it has become increasingly difficult to come across ethically sound communities and persons, particularly in the more recent years. It seems more and more people are not concerned or really don't care about doing what is good against what is bad. And so when I looked at it, I realized the young people that we have in the university today will soon not have, or will soon not be able to recognize what really is good or what is bad. So someone does have to take an action at a point. And so that is where I came in. Now, not to say that no action was being done, because we even have a unit, an ethics and leadership unit being taught in most of the universities. But when I did a little bit, just an informal research, it did not really bring out action, ethical action out of the individuals who took that unit. Most of the persons who have taken that unit are more concerned about earning a grade more than actually going forward to live what the unit is teaching. So for that reason, I decided to take on this project, and gladly I came across, while I was interacting with the Education Collaborative, I came across this track, and I decided, why this was just the right time for this. And so we are lacking models where people, would be coaches or models in this area of ethics. And it grieves me a lot when I see the society celebrating and elevating persons who are getting away with unethical behavior. They're actually being celebrated and elevated. And so what that means is, for your young persons, they have no one they can, those are the people they will esteem. And in the course of time, it will become worse and worse for our societies. So my goal is to plant a seed for those who are in university right now with us. If I could just be able to plant a seed in them, to develop in them a culture of ethical action, then perhaps we would be able to save a generation down the road somehow. So that's, I think, what I would call my introduction to why I got into this. Then now, my target group has been the young people. These are right now the student leaders. I thought to focus on those who are interested in leadership. So that is not just, it's not too wide out there. Those who are already in leadership, or and particularly the student leaders, like at our university, they are the Riara University Students Association. There is the clubs and societies leaders. There are the sports leaders. Those are the persons I am focusing on majorly, because they've already stepped into a leadership role, and perhaps this is the time to try and mold what leadership should be like when it comes to ethics. And so if they can buy into what I am trying to tell them, then perhaps they can influence their peers, and perhaps their own lives will be influenced for them to act ethically even in future. So that's my target group, and those are the people I am working with. Now, where am I with this project? So my first point of call was to have a bit of a consultative stage or forum, I would call it. In this stage, I was seeking just to get their views, to get their understanding, to get their input as regards this particular aspect of ethics, how they view the society themselves, how they themselves would want the society to look like. And so some of the questions I've been asking them in this particular stage is, have you ever encountered a situation of unethical behavior, and how did you approach it, and how did you tackle it? What informs their action against unethical behavior when they come across one? And the challenges that they encounter with trying to make ethical decisions. Do they have role models, people they look up to that they think are ethical or can be termed as ethical persons? Also, some of the other questions is, are they interested in learning more on how they can actually be empowered to take ethical action in their own lives, in their own areas, spheres of influence? And even I've asked them, do they know about corruption happening around them, how they view it? And of course, there are interesting comments and remarks that have come out of those conversations. I've actually not finished on those conversations because I have had to meet the groups in different categories so that I can get at least as close as possible to a particular category. For example, I've had to meet the university council leaders on their own, then the clubs and societies also on their own, and the sports persons on their own, with a view that in the area of their operation, perhaps the dynamics may be different here and there. So that it's not too general. I try to be a bit more specific with them. So yeah, and also trying to identify persons that influence their way of doing things, and are those persons ethically sound? What do they see that makes them think that they are ethically sound? Just to have an input and their buy-in into the conversation, so that at the end of the day, if there is going to be a change of heart or a buy into what I am proposing, then they will have taken part in the whole journey, right from the beginning up to where we'll be able to form some form of direction together. So aside of that, we've taken time to attend a few forums, national or I would call them national forums that are organized by societies in around us who are working towards ethical leadership. Is one particular society that we've engaged with closely, that is a ethical leadership network. There are persons who are in the country and their drive is towards pushing for better leadership in the nation. So we've attended several of their forums just to be able to hear what the society and other persons outside ourselves are saying about this particular topic, and just also to see if there are people out there interested in really making a change for the better of the society, or perhaps we are the only ones thinking about this particular issue. But gladly, yes, there are many people that now we've interacted with and have learned that are interested in making a change. So we've learned that we are not alone and that there are several persons and players outside of our university who can be of help to us, and particularly when the students now finish the university, they would be able to have references or to have people that they can talk to beyond ourselves or beyond the four walls of the university. So that's one group. We've also engaged in getting close to a form of partnership or agreement with the National Anti-Corruption Authority in the country, that is the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Authority. We are yet to finalize some form of I would call an MOU or something. But ideally, we learned that they have programs they would want to deploy to help the society with this issue of ethics. They've not been very effective, but the programs are available. So we want to see how we can explore that as well and see if that can be expanded from our universities to the other universities that are within our sphere. So yeah, this is where we are at. We are in the middle now of that forum, I'm calling consultative forum, discussing with various parties how they can be involved, how the students view the matter, how also the faculty, particularly the faculty who are teaching this unit, ethics and leadership, how they view it and what response they would give and what input they would give or would want for it to be more effective in the lives of the young people who are coming through our hands. So this is where we are at this point in time. Now, let me also share what few lessons that I've learned in this journey. First, for the majority of people, it is a bit unclear what needs to be done or how even a culture can be built. In the context of Kenya, I think most people have kind of given up because of what they've seen in the national leadership. They have kind of given up, and even our younger persons are not too sure if anything can actually be done about it. The other thing that I've learned is that there are really no clear role models that one can point out, perhaps in very, very close and intimate, maybe family members and so on and so forth. But there are no really clear role models that can be pointed out that the young persons can ascribe to or can talk about or can emulate. So that's quite a challenge. Then I've also learned that they know, most people know doing wrong, doing right. They know what all that means. Apart from, the national laws, the constitution and all that. But people are drawn to making unethical decisions quite easily, despite there being so many laws, despite there being so many bylaws and so on and so forth. Then, we need to cultivate a strong conviction around doing what is right against doing what is wrong. So how to do that is actually quite challenging. Didn't seem to have any of the persons I have so far talked to have a clarity on how that should be done. So perhaps then that's why this program is important to continue with. So those are just a few of the lessons that I have learned. Then I have encountered some challenges. First of all, getting persons to discuss this matter has not been very easy. Most people are a bit emotive and want to go off pointing fingers towards national leaders and other areas. But to bring it to a personal perspective, those commitments are not very easy to be done. That's what I've seen. Some say there's no need to try because society is rotten through and through. So there's perhaps no impact that will be done by it. These are the challenges that I'm seeing. Then there seems to be no motivation for doing good. When you compare to persons doing bad and how they are getting away with it and how they are perhaps enjoying their life, especially in the view of the students, there is no good motivation for doing good. So maybe that's something that needs to be thought about or figured out. So where then, or what are the next steps that I have ahead of me? So out of these forums, which I am carrying out this semester and perhaps a little bit of the early of next year, I hope to be able to bring together an ethics and leadership symposium so that this matter can be discussed in a more wider and louder perspective. Perhaps come up with some commitments and solutions that are more solid and that are more agreeable with most people, and see if this can actually be the little rudder in a big ship that makes the big ship turn from where it's been driving to. I am also hoping to explore giving voice to values as we get into the new year. So yeah, these are my next steps up to there. And perhaps colleagues, you can now chip in and ask questions and you can take it on from there. I hope it's not too brief. You can see a question, Grace.
Yes, thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing that. My question will be, so for Riara University, what are the system, since you are building institutional system, what does the ethics and leadership atmosphere look right now at Riara University, and where does your project sit? So what gap is it addressing at Riara? I know that from your project, you are looking to, one of the goals that you have is to have a seminar, a conference sort of, to really generate ideas on how to promote ethical action. You also wanted to work on a manual. I think we had a speaker session where you talked a little bit about what the manual will contain. And a few other things that you put on there. I think you also had a reward scheme. So all of these things were your goals. But I think for the first part of it, it will be good to understand ethics and leadership at Riara right now. What exists and what gaps are you trying to address? And in your conversations, you mentioned that you've had conversations with the student leaders, the leadership. What, through those discussions, what came up? What questions did you ask them? What were your questions? And for each of the groups, and what came out in that conversation? So those are the two key questions that I have. I think from there, we can take it on. Thank you very much.
All right. Another question. Oh, it's Grace, your hand up. Perhaps there's another question that, and actually, members, you can feel free to throw in the comments on the chat box. Yes, Ruth, perhaps maybe it's closely related, then I could answer them together.
Yeah, maybe So thank you, Andrew. Great work right there. I really like the work that you've done. I was just wondering, maybe in connection to what Grace was asking, maybe it's related somewhere. What were the views of the student leaders that you were listening to about the interconnectivity between, what were their views about the interconnectivity between the ethics and leadership course that is offered in the school? And whether you had mentioned something, when you were doing your introduction, you mentioned something like they're mostly doing it for the grade, you know? So these students, did they give you their feedback about that course and whether it has enhanced their different way of the ethical way of doing things, or did they talk about that course? So my question will be, do we really need that course? Do we need it as a course only, or do we need it as an area of specialization? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This Pedro also.
Hi, Andrew.
Hi.
Hi. So I run a program called Intetos Obomi at Rhodes University in South Africa, conversations about life. And I asked my students two questions, different sets of students, but there were about 250 students on every occasion. I asked them one question, just before COVID hit, why do you come to university? What's the point? And their answer is money. And I heard like one voice, the 250 students spoke in one voice, money. When I asked my students this year, at the beginning of this year, to consider the following option, you come to university, you've paid your fees, you walk in, you have two options. One is you go and you do the normal thing that students do. And the other one, you walk into this office and you just get certified immediately, you get your degree stamped and you walk away, certified by the university. About 50% of our students chose that option. Now, this to me speaks of deep-seated ideological corruption, also fueled by poverty and precarity. So one of the things that I need to tell you about my students is almost all of my students are Black and poor, or they at least come from working class background, right? So precarious situation. And of course, if they don't see what the point of ethics is, that if they've never had the opportunity to think about it, then obviously money is an obvious incentive. They need the money. Their extended families are pushing them hard to get a degree quickly and make the money. This is a standard picture. So the question that I ask is, that's a clear incentive. We need to make money because we're poor, and we need to, and also because of status, and this is important, because of status concerns. Poor people are considered to be lower on the scale of being than rich people. That's flaunted all over the place in the media and everywhere else. In South Africa, very strongly, and I'm sure that happens across the continent and globally, in fact. If the more money you have, the better human being you are. So there's clear incentives to become rich no matter what. And rich in a way that doesn't involve making a social contribution, because if you don't know what you're doing, you've been certified as a doctor and you have no idea what it is to be a doctor, you have a degree. I mean, you're going to kill patients. I mean, you're just interested in the money. You're not interested in the social good that might bring about, except perhaps in some cases the extended family, although I have some story about there. So how do we compete? So the question I ask from the in terms of ethics is, how do we compete? How do we compete with that strength, with that strong force, that strong incentive? And the question then that needs to be asked is, what incentives are there for being ethical? And you mentioned that seems to be something that people have given up on in your neck of the woods. I think that's also probably true to a large extent in South Africa. But I would be a little bit more optimistic. I'd say, what is it? What are the forces that are blinding them to this possibility? And how can we address them? So I'll leave it there. I have a lot more to say, but I'll leave it there for you to answer or suggest.
All right.
We can have a conversation about this together.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Pedro. Let me just quickly just run through a few of these questions before they become too many. But perhaps members, you can also, share if you have a thought, because this is a work in progress, and I am hoping to get the best out of it at the end of the day. So starting with the question, what systems are in place at the moment? Definitely the university has a code of conduct for both the staff and the students. So it's quite clear the do's and don'ts that are available for the students. Then the unit ethics and leadership is provided as a core unit, as a core unit at the beginning. So what I've found is that once it's done, everyone puts it aside and doesn't really pay much attention to it. Of course, they have the knowledge, but they are not paying any attention to it, or they are not particularly driven to taking action based on the knowledge that they have acquired over time. So that's what I learned out of the students who I interacted with when I asked them about the ethics and leadership class that they are taking and how it has been of impact to them. Of course, they remark they have information, they have understanding, but what remains and where I see the gap is pushing them to make decisions ethically. Not just having the knowledge, but getting them to that point where they can depend on, they can actually make a decision when they come across a situation that is difficult to handle. And so the other question here is what were the views of the leaders in the interconnectivity, of do we really need the course? Yes, we need the course because it does have critical aspects. It does give them the knowledge that they need. But I think there is more that is needed to enhance it, to make it more, towards living the life itself, more than just an academic unit that one wants to take, ensure that they have met their grades, passed in that particular unit, and more so they want to pay attention to their skills, what skill they are going to gain, and perhaps alluding closer to what Pedro was talking about, that will drive them to make money quickly, more than actually think how ethically they can handle affairs in life as they go along. So, how do we now compete with a strong proposition that is out there when you look at what the media and everyone else is offering, the quick money incentives? That is a big question that needs perhaps more input from members. I am actually looking for the same, but in my program I had put that we will put some incentive. Of course, perhaps with this grant it may be a very small incentive, to the students, and as they bring along ethical issues that they've faced and overcome. So there was going to be a reward system where we can be able to reward students that in their leadership role, they've tackled a situation and been able to weather through. So we will have a form of a reward system that we had put in place for that. But I guess it will need to be expanded further. I see Pedro is back and Solomon.
Yeah, thanks again. I wasn't thinking about monetary reward. I was thinking about something that competes with it. I don't think monetary rewards will work very well at all. It'll just encourage the same sort of behavior. What I would suggest is, sorry to go to philosophy, but this is one of at the heart of the Western philosophical tradition, particularly Plato. And Plato's big question in the Republic is how do we encourage people to be good? What I think we need to do if we're going to succeed here is show people that there are other things that are valuable other than money, and how does ethics weave into the pattern of our lives such that if we do behave ethically, it'll be in our own interest to do so. The Buddhists have a similar idea, and I think the ethics of Ubuntu in South Africa, and I think similar things in Sub-Saharan Africa might also be good fertile ground for investigation. But in the case of Buddhism, ethics flows from happiness. So you pursue happiness, your personal happiness, in a way that the Buddhists understand happiness, which is equanimity and non-reactivity, in particular, and you learn to do that, and in a way, the goodness will flow from it. So happiness, in a way, is part and parcel of what it is to be an ethical human being. Now, I'm not saying that that's the magic bullet, but I'm saying that something along those lines. What we do is we talk about how personal freedom, their own personal freedom, their own ability to be authors of their own lives, in the case of our students, their self-mastery, all these things are connected to being ethical, and how, and to what extent unethical people are not the masters of their own lives. And so something like that's an incentive that I think is far more valuable than the monetary. The monetary incentive that you were suggesting, I think, would be counterproductive. Thanks.
Thank you. That's good. Solomon, perhaps?
All right. Thank you for the invitation to be on this program. I agree entirely with Pedro about the limitations that we encounter if you have to engage in monetary compensation or reward for ethical practices. But my take actually is about whether you consider looking at the media consumption pattern of the students. Because like Pedro said, in my class here at Caleb University, I have students what the major thing students talk about as interesting to them is making money. And if you trace it back, you realize because what they see in the media is essentially about, particularly on social media, essentially about people who make money here and there, who have made it. And so that gives them a sense of what they too should pursue. And even when those people are later found out or have been engaged in unethical practices. So we need to look at how much of this content comes to them that they consume and then becomes a pattern of life for them. So I think your work will be able to get a much data if you can consider the media consumption pattern of the students concerned. And let me commend the work because I see it as a foundation for something bigger and greater out there. Well done. Thank you so much.
Very well. Thank you, Solomon. That's a good point. Aki, I don't know how to pronounce the name.
That's fine, sir. My name is actually Akinyomade Olabi.
All right. Okay.
All right. So generally for me, because I see ethics as something that is not just starting in the classroom or with our students. It's more of a societal thing. So the question is, when you look at the society today tends to celebrate more persons who can show the bling, like was mentioned by Solomon, who can show the bling, who can show us what they've achieved, regardless of talking about the source. Unlike before, let's say like 30, 50 years before now, people are interested in how did you get here? But today, nobody's interested in how you got here. It's what we can see on social media here and there that everybody's celebrating. But I think what we need to consciously do is bring persons who have amassed wealth or have made accomplishment unethically, maybe in the past 20 years or 30 years, and the consequences of that today. And probably if we publicize that more, it's no longer we will see what will happen in the future. We can actually see what has happened to someone who has done the same now. So we're not waiting for them to experience it and find out the consequences. We're making them learn from other people's experience to see that is not the way to go. And also celebrate those that have, accomplished greatness or great heights through ethical means, celebrate them more and, emphasize on the rudiments and how they arrived where they are, the efforts they made, the decisions they took that got them where they are today. And also make that, give them more publicity. That way, we would be able to begin to, give them a mind shift from what they used to believe or what they think they believe, what the social media is feeding them now, that you don't have to do it right to actually make it big, just do whatever it is and make it big. That would help them shift. That's just my contribution. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Very well noted. Quite a number of people. I'm not sure. Albert?
Thank you, Andrew. And I would like to thank you for sharing what you're doing at Riara. I really want to congratulate you. I think very inspiring. I come from Uganda Matters University, and at our university, ethics is very central to the teaching and learning. We have an institute which has become a new department of ethics, and we teach ethics to all the students that pass through our university. But why I want to commend what you're doing. Our experience shows that apart from teaching ethics in the classroom, it's very important what every other person does at the institution. So the environment in which students learn ethics is very, very important. Role models, how the finances are managed by the institution, and many things. So engaging the different stakeholders in your university for me is very, very important to create a culture of ethics, but also to educating into values these students. I know from some of the tracer studies that we've done that students are even feared out there by graduates from other universities because they say they're too ethical. They will not allow us to do the things we want to do. But it's all up to the way we teach ethics. But I feel for me, it's the environment where we teach ethics. So engaging all stakeholders, everyone in the institution like the university contributes to the final product. So the student, and I would like to say that it's true, the teaching of ethics is very, very important. But it's not enough if you don't engage the different stakeholders. And it doesn't depend on even poverty. I agree with what Pedro said, but my university takes students from at least the rich families here, but the problem is the same. We have an education system that promises people, ask a specific question similar to what Pedro does, and the expectations from an education that students receive from the university gives the expectation of getting money instead of helping society. And I think that's why education in ethics is very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. I think you just touched on something that I had mentioned. I see, Ruth, you were asking about the gap that Grace was asking about. The gap is that part where, yes, the unit is being taught. We have the code of conducts, but then after a period, when you sit with the students, it's not much of a concern to them how things are being handled ethically or unethically. It is a concern, but for them to act that way, it's not particularly something that you would expect immediately when they face a situation. So I was trying to get that gap sorted out so that students just don't take an academic unit, and then in the end, when they get out of their learning system, they are not particularly impacted by that particular unit. So just going a bit more beyond that academic learning part, that's a gap that I saw that needed to be filled. And that way maybe the society can have some people who are a little bit changed. Is that Solomon again? I think there had been someone else.
Yes. You just mentioned something I think we should be interested in. If we teach students ethics in class and we do not see it being practiced outside of the classroom, there is that we should also be concerned about the parental angle. because parents are expected to reinforce what we teach in class when the students go home. Of course, that also takes us back to the cycle. So it looks like a cycle now of the society giving to the classroom students who have been taught not to value ethical standards, and we're now telling them that ethical standards are okay to be practiced. Then when they go back to that society and there's no means of reinforcing what we have taught them, then it looks like we have not really done the job. So there's a need to also see, like someone said earlier, how to bring in stakeholders, parents, the classroom, teachers, other stakeholders in society. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think there's another hand or two. If you're, yes, Babaka.
Hi.
Hi.
First of all, I would like to thank you for your presentation, which I think is very interesting. And also listening to you, I saw many similarities with the context in Senegal in terms of attitude of people, you know, the fact that people have given up the absence or lack of role models, because now people look more after wrestlers or NBA stars or football players than, you know, people who are really ethical. And there is a need, I think, to do something, especially in our Francophone environment. I see that in the Anglophone countries, I mean, systematically, they have that unit about ethics and leadership, which is not really the case in Senegal. So I'm wondering who is teaching that class? Is it a specific department, let's say, I mean, is it in sociology or law, or is it a course that is required for all levels? I think the research is very interesting, and I think I'm even tempted to start something here, because we really have a crisis, especially with student leadership. I see that you work with associations, clubs, and in my university particularly, I think there is a need to work with those people, because in the past we've had real issues with them, students destroying the university property when they were not happy. For example, even the building, the administrative building was burned down, and we had to do, to rebuild it. We have other examples of behaviors that are not really ethical. And sometimes even it is against their own selves, because usually when they destroy the property, they don't have enough infrastructure already, so they suffer from it. So I think it is very interesting. Now, my question is, what are your final objectives? After you do the research, how do you intend to use it? So thank you again for your really interesting presentation.
Right, thank you, Babaka and Dr. Koril, perhaps so that I can answer. Dr. Koril, Lois.
I think you can go ahead and answer Dr. Babaka. Yes, I think you can go ahead and answer Dr. Babakar, and then we can take more questions. Is that okay?
So I think what was my objective at the end of the day was to first of all inculcate a culture of ethical action, not just based on the knowledge, but beyond that. And that's why I hope even to tap into something like giving voice to values. But then also to strengthen what we have in place, the student code of conduct, the staff code of conduct, and also enhance, if everything should go well, we should have a department that deals with ethics and teaches ethics and continues this from the first year all the way to the fourth year of a student in a university, so that it just doesn't become a 1-year unit that you take up, and then after that, when all the other 40, 50 units, you take them on, the 1 unit becomes something that you forgot about, and then you just focus on what the society is doing and become that kind of person. So I was hoping that, and that's my plan, to work with the stakeholders in the university to make it something that you continuously grow over, so that by the time you're finishing your university, it becomes a culture for you to think ethical action, right or wrong, before you take an action. It becomes a part of your culture. So that's my overall goal for this. So perhaps Dr. Lois still has a question. Her hand is up. If not, I think I can quickly run through. I've seen some really good comments on the chat. So thank you, Achesi. Yes, I've picked that point about motivation. Well, it was not going to be money as such, but definitely I like the thought that Pedro has brought in. So that will at least inform me to think a bit further on what kind of motivation to bring on board. Are there peculiar cultural issues that you have found as hindrances to adoption of ethical values? I think in terms of what has been touched, issues of some of the students coming from poor backgrounds and wanting to really get out of that situation, that could be one of them. That's what I could point out here. Thank you. Good afternoon. I think attention is central. Head understanding alone will not do, especially if there are social pressure pushing us in the opposite direction. Well said, Pedro. I agree with you completely. I think, Ruth, I mentioned the gap. I hope you got it. Or it is clear. Perhaps if it's not clear, then I need to make it clear. I had someone in the UK who takes students to jail to speak to people who are there for corruption. That's a good thought. We have a jail close by. I am tempted to do that. An approach to reward system to promote ethical leadership would be guiding students on success journey, having an incubation system that empowers them to succeed early. You said that one thing you have noted is a lack of role models. So the incubation can be intentional in bringing role models. Thank you, Mary. I will take that up as well.
Yeah, Dr. Justa has her hands up, so you can take Dr. Justa.
The problem is the conceptual definition of ethics, or perhaps that needs to be explored further. Golden.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I was saying Dr. Justa has her hands up, so I guess she can go.
Oh, all right.
Dr. Justa, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Dr. Justa Nyaga from Management University of Africa here in Kenya. And I just want to start by thanking Andrew for the good study we've done, good work they've done in their standing, and very good recommendations they are giving us here, as well as the contribution from different members. Now, I want to agree with the discussion and what you found out about maybe what you do teaching the subject ethical leadership, having the ethics, the code of conduct for the students and for the staff, which also applies to the Management University of Africa. And actually, we have gone ahead and come up with what we call the anti-corruption policy and a committee set, which actually take on all those and where people can report different issues. Although I might confess that it's not that effective because we've just started, so we are learning from each other. And my comment or my thinking would be, if we could expose our students to some of these culture or these universities or these different places which are already embracing the ethical leadership or ethics in their culture, then we could go an extra mile. The other day I visited Josai University in Japan, and what I realized is the roads leading to the university, there are a lot of neighborhood with a lot of fruits, hanging along the road, and the students would not pick those particular fruits. So I wish we can take our students there, and then they see that the other students from those countries, they don't pick those items from their neighborhood. In our case here, I'm pretty sure around our university we could have such neighborhood, then the student would pick those fruits and all that. So I think we just need to find out how, maybe through exchange programs and all that, we can expose our students all that and our faculty, so that they're able to see that corruption can really be dealt with, and all those unethical behavior can still be dealt with here in our local situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Daktari. Good. I think I see no other hands and no further comments. I must say, oh yes, there's a comment from Golden. It is a psychosocial issue that rewards for being ethical against being unethical societies tend to celebrate heroism. Thank you. Yes, that's what we are facing. But thank you, colleagues. I think I have learned a lot. This will really enhance what I'm doing, and I am glad I'm still at the lower stages. So this really builds what I'm trying to get to. And I'm also glad to note that this is not just happening in my own area of influence. It happens around the world. And I've taken note of the various comments to improve on what I'm doing. Really glad that you guys have been able to join in and to share what we are doing. And I guess that's the heart of education collaborating. We are able to share what we are using, what we are working with to better each other's area. Over to you, Grace. I don't think I have anything else. Oh, Professor Okeo is here with us.
Professor Okeo, yes.
Grace,
can you share?
Andrew, can I have your contact, please? Email.
Absolutely.
I wanted to greet people and say a big thank you to Andrew, our neighbor here.
Yes.
I'm from Management University of Africa, same as Dr. Justa. And I think it is a wonderful work. This morning we're having a meeting, and one of the pillars that we're discussing was actually ethical leadership and the issues around it, and how we can inculcate ethical leadership in at the Management University of Africa. So what you are discussing really is at the bottom of our hearts, and I'm glad Dr. Justa has relived some experiences that we saw in Japan just last week, actually. We just came back from Japan last week, end of last week. And it would be interesting to kind of do some benchmarking. I think that would be a very good point to sort of explore the different ways in which you can pursue ethics or ethical and leadership in a university setting. And I like the contributions from the gentleman from South Africa. I think they're all very, very good with clear-cut suggestions on what could be done. My point, without going into so much detail, is there need to do you think there would be need to stratify, sort of do some kind of stratification based on staff and then students? And when you come to students, then there are students who are almost leaving the university, and then there are some who are coming in. So would there be need to put more focus on the ones who are coming in, because then you can follow their behavior and you can work on them throughout, whether they are taking 3-year courses or 4-year courses. So throughout that period, then you can focus on those. Whether that would be more effective rather than just doing a global sort of thing. I don't know how you have structured your study, but I would think that it would be important to lay more focus on the incoming students so that you have a longer time with them. But importantly, there's a point which kept on coming up, excuse me, as to what gap has Riara University saw that they're coming in to fill. I think it would be important to, maybe you have already done it. I didn't log in, earlier into a discussion. Maybe you have done it, but would it not be necessary to do some kind of survey to get a baseline information? And this would help in two ways, maybe at least two ways. One is to, when you know the current situation, then you can always measure incremental you can measure incrementally what progress you are making, so that you can say, okay, within the first year I started with this number, and then now I've increased it to this number, and therefore this is the percentage ethical, leadership, ethical behavior that I have gained, and we are heading towards. You can even decide to calculate an index that you want Riara University to have. Of, say, whatever percent that you want, based on the country's index or based on your own, other institutions in the indices, so that you can have a way of measuring your success using those baseline indicators. Those are my comments, and otherwise it's a good work. We are neighbors here. I'll be keen to come and witness firsthand what you're doing, not just through the screen. And then we can have more discussion together. Thank you very much. And thank you, Grace, for putting this one together. I think I like this series. They're very, very informative. So I thank you so much because it makes us come together and makes us share ideas, which is definitely going to help us move a step further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you. Thank you. Grace, you can take over.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor. And I'm really glad that it's been helpful. The committee of practice is usually supposed to be very practical, where institutions can come and engage and take away. So that's really great. One thing I'd like to add to what you've shared, Andrew, at the beginning, when you shared that you have interacted with students, with executive leadership staff, it brought my mind to something that we are working on at the Education Collaborative. So we are developing something we call the Honor System Manual for institutions in the network to access. So if you are an institution and you want to develop an ethical culture within your university, we are leveraging on Ashesi University's Honor System and experiences to develop a manual where institutions can look and sort of go step by step and develop one on their own. And one of the steps, I would say, it's interacting with stakeholders. And it would be good to have, for Andrew, it would be good to have, for the different segments, what kind of questions you asked and some of the pointers that came out very clearly from the different segments. It would be very good to map out and see what the different segments are saying and how that informs the end product at the end. Because I would assume that whatever the executive leadership would be concerned about will be a bit different from what the students will be concerned about. But bringing it all together really helps to build that culture where everybody accepts. Like, since everybody's coming together to build it, now everybody sort of works together to grow that culture. So it will be good to see. And once the manual is ready, we'll definitely make it available to all institutions in the network to have access to. And thank you all so much for your contributions as well. I hope it has been useful for you and for your institutions to help you think about what you are doing when it comes to ethics, aside Riara University, who is like working actively on this project that you have all given input to. If there are no questions, are there any pressing questions? If they are not, I'm going to share a little bit about the Ethics and Leadership Committee of Practice. I'll definitely give you some time back today. The Ethics and Leadership Committee of Practice, it's okay, there's one hand raised. I'll let you go, then I'll come and talk about the COP, then we can end. Yes, Miss Professor Ake, please go ahead. Or is it, okay.
All right, so I wanted to ask a question which has been bothering me majorly. I don't know if you can hear me clearly. So, because for me, the question is, how do we stem, or how do we reduce the impact of the society on these students? Because it's not just happening in this university community. We're trying to change their minds at the university level. But how do we go into the society to also reduce that impact, or to actually bring an end to it, and also try to influence that part of their life, so that even before they come to university, they're already getting knowledge about ethics and the like. So probably we should consider also reaching out to lower schools like high schools, primary schools, and begin to run campaigns about the importance of ethics.
That's a really good point. And to add to that, we have Kepler University. Can you mute? Okay, sure. Thank you. Kepler University recently did a project. So they also had a grant, and their project was focused on pre-tertiary students. So building an ethical culture or mindset among pre-tertiary students even before they come to the university. So they would have an opportunity for them to also share as well how they are doing that before the students come into the university. So thank you for highlighting that. If you are not a member of the Committee of Practice, we invite you to join us. It's a community of higher education leaders, staff, educators who are passionate about promoting ethical leadership through higher education institutions. And in these sessions, they are very practical. We also have micro grants for Committee of Practice members. So you have an opportunity to apply for a grant to implement the learnings you are learning from these sessions. So it's all year round. So when you join these sessions and you feel like there are certain aspects that you want to implement, you can access the proposal template, which will be your membership pack. Once you become a member, we'll send all of that to you. But at the end of this session, I'll send you, anyone who hasn't registered, I'll send you the link to register if you are interested in joining the COP. And then we'll also share the meeting notes as well. So that would be key announcements from my end. If there are no other questions, would end this meeting. We are giving you 21 minutes back. And yeah, thank you all so much for joining. Thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing. We look forward to seeing the outcomes of the project, and you would have the opportunity to share that as well with members of the community to see how we moved from the beginning to the end. So thank you very much. Thank you all so much for your valuable contributions as well. All the best in your day. Bye.